Hello, space fairies. I've had a lot of jobs in my life already, and a lot of bosses to go with them, and you know what? I'm happy to report that most of them did not disappear. But Bounce did. Bounce disappeared. Who is Bounce, you ask? Well, great question, and possibly one without an answer. I'm going to take you back to November of many years ago. I had just quit my old job and started a new one as a Christmas elf. Yes, a Christmas elf for a Santa's grotto in a mall. On my first day in mid-November, I'm introduced to the head elf and my new boss, Bounce. Bounce was a middle-aged man, about my height, with several missing teeth, and he's also wearing a plastic crown. But most notably, he has a name tag that says Bounce. This is notable because in the undercover secret society world of mall elves, we're all given matching name tags with new elf names on them, so the children who visit never learn our real human identities. This is part of making them believe wholeheartedly that we are real Santa's elves. So my name was Mistletoe, my boss was called Bounce. Fair enough, that's just part of the job. But from that point on, anyone who asked Bounce his real name would be met with either laughter or silence. So yeah, as far as anyone knew, this man was Bounce. In our little mall elf family, there was Bounce the head elf, me, Mistletoe, the second in command, Glimmer, Twinkle, Snowdrop, Tinsel, and, of course, Santa. I actually outranked Santa, and you know what? Yeah, that is a good feeling. Anyway, Bounce and I, as elves, would both head up the front of house, greeting the guests, explaining the prices, and taking bookings. This meant we spent a lot of time together, 11 hours a day in fact, 6 days a week. But in order to preserve the magic of Christmas, we were never ever allowed to break character in front of customers, so we rarely had the chance to speak as ourselves. Instead, we kind of just mostly told improvised stories about our fictional elf lives, like he would ask me about my fictional elf family and the elf school I took my elf kids to, and I in turn asked him about the elf motorcycle he was fixing up in his elf garage. Maybe there was some truth to anything he told me, but in our time together, I only learned 3 things for absolutely certain. He liked to gamble, he was terrified of ATMs, and he loved the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that is as far as I got. Because one day in December, a few weeks into the job, Bounce didn't come into work, and that's when I got a very subtly panicked call from the head office.
Hey, so no big deal, nothing to worry about, but Bounce hasn't clocked in today and we're not sure where he is, so could you do us the teensiest favor and be head elf today?
Sure. So I was head elf for the day, and when our shifts ended, I did head elf duties like locking everything up, logging all the hours, and doing the accounting. That was probably the first time I felt like something wasn't right, but I'll get back to that. Because the next day, still no Bounce. And then the day after that, still no Bounce. On the 4th day, the head office called and apologised and asked me to be head elf again, but they did explain that Bounce had called them and said he was ill and would be back in by the end of the week. The end of the week arrives, and still no Bounce. And then I got another call from head office.
So, great news! We've discussed it between all the managers, and we'd like to offer you the role of head elf full-time for the rest of the season.
Oh, that's really cool. Hey, quick question just off the top of my head. What the hell happened to Bounce?
Oh, Bounce isn't coming back.
Oh. Is he okay?
We're not sure.
They're not sure? They're not sure. They then go on to explain that after a few more no-shows, they called Bounce back on the number he'd called them on, only to discover it was connected to a roadside cafe several 100 miles away. Okay, so when Bounce called in sick, a week ago, he was in a cafe hundreds of miles away? Here is my theory. Remember that accounting I mentioned? Well, that's when I noticed that Bounce had been paying himself exclusively in cash. Let's add to the fact that he was afraid of ATMs, and when he told me this, he said it was because it made him easier to find. At first, I thought he meant the government, but then I remembered how much he liked gambling, and I decided that he probably meant some kind of mob who he frequently owed money to. This is all wild speculation, but I sincerely believe that Bounce the elf lost a bet, owed a lot of money to the wrong people, and eventually skipped town and called in to use us as an alibi. Anyway, none of us ever heard from him again. the rest of the Christmas season came and went with me acting as head elf, and on Christmas Eve, we hung up our hats and bells for the last time and went our separate ways. But, and this is absolutely true, before we shut up shop for the year, Tinsel, the youngest elf, saw it first. Tucked away on a shelf that used to be blocked by stock was a name tag and a plastic crown. And that's when I learnt the fourth thing for absolutely certain. If he is still out there, wherever he is not Bounce.